Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, guys. Today we're going to continue talking about discussing Aqeedah issues. So there's one thing that always got to me when I started delving into these matters. I saw like both sides are making the arguments, and all of them have evidence from the Quran and Sunnah, and this is that, their own different interpretations. And I knew like right there and there that I had to make a decision. You are going to have to make a decision. Which one are you going to follow? Which Aqeedah are you going to follow? You cannot escape that. So I saw like there's only one method I know that is the best of my ability, which is rationality. What makes the most sense? If you give me any other method, that's not when I'm at my best, is not when I'm not using my reason. You see, when I'm at my best, when I want to make a critical decision in life or in any other thing, I use my reason. Okay? When I'm saying I don't want to be a Christian or similar stuff, I'm using my reason. That's my sharpest tool that God has given me. And this is what I'm going to use. Wherever this leads me to, that's what I take. Okay? Whatever it leads me to, that's what I take. Just like if someone is a Christian and he uses reason, we hope that reason will lead him to God. Bismillah. Anyway, with all of this, of course you're going to make dua, but you're going to use your reason and hope that your reason, and you try to be as unsentimental as possible. Whatever that leads you to, that's what you're going to follow. But today, I want to point out something in this whole Aqeedah discourse. What's going on here? I had always felt like we are actually going beyond what is necessary sometimes. I felt like when you read those verses, those proof texts that are supposed to show one position or the other, there's another thing going on behind the scene. The context of what's going on behind the scene. We are missing that, and we want to talk about God in and of himself. Like for instance, the verse that talks about yet. Okay, so you have the Ashari and the Salafis. They are disagreeing. What is the yet? What does it mean? The other is saying, is that God has hand? Are you saying God doesn't have hand? The other is saying, God has hand, but we do Tafwid. And I feel like, what is that verse talking about? You need to read the context of that verse. It's not talking about description of God. We are ones going in there to drive it. Do you understand? We are going in there to drive, because now when we focus on talking about God, then we start to see all those things like the head. But God didn't say, oh, come and see my hand, I have hands. God never told us, see, I have hands, for instance. Okay? God didn't tell us that. But we kind of, I'm not saying you cannot do it, but we need to understand that. For instance, when Shaitan didn't prostrate to Adam, when Allah said you should prostrate, there's a verse that talks about this. Bima khalaqtu bi yaday, what I created with my two hands. Okay, so now you focus on the two hands and you say, I have two hands right there. I have two hands. And then you go to another verse and then you say, right here I have another one. Whereas the verse is not talking about hands, is not related to the description of God as in hands. The verse is talking about Shaitan disobeying God. Why do we leave that and then we focus on hands? Think about it. I'm saying, why are we moving away from the real context of the verse, which is talking about Shaitan disobeying God literally, and God telling him, I created something and you didn't prostrate to it? You leave that and then you focus on the hand. And you say, look at it, I have proof text for hand. God has hands and it's two. Bro, do you get what I'm saying? So, to me, I believe, take all those verses, many of them that people use for this, you will see like, there's a bigger context that we can actually rest in, rather than talking about God ontologically in and of himself. Okay? So, when God describes himself in that manner, you already know we're going to have a problem here. Some people will say this is anthropomorphism, and some people will say it's not. But there's a middle ground where we just talk about the verse itself. We don't talk about God. God did not ask us to come and say, do I have hands or not? Do you believe I have hands? God commanded Shaitan to prostrate. That's what I get from that verse. That is the most important thing in that verse. Okay? And to me, that's why when I now say, okay, I have to choose one of these Aqeedah, some people will be like, you don't even need to choose. But historically, to me, the safest position, in my own opinion, from what I've seen, is to actually do Tafwid. That's the safest position. And you know, the Hanbali, now I'm coming to see that the Hanbali Aqeedah, there's actually something called the Hanbali Aqeedah that is different from the Salafi Aqeedah. The Hanbali Aqeedah is something like, we don't talk about these things somehow. Even though me, I'll say I'm much more in line with the Asharis a lot, because they have arguments for many of other things. But to me, if you are confused on this issue, why don't you take the main thing the verse is talking about and just do tafwid on anything that you don't know, so that you don't put yourself in trouble by saying, this way I will stand on this by force, rather than just do tafwid. Leave the meaning to God. Because, and in another video I'll show why are we even arguing about these things. Like, some people think they don't understand what they're saying. In my own opinion, maybe the people that they formulated the doctrine, maybe they know what they were saying, but you probably don't know what you're saying. When we're talking about meaning, are you talking about how we see things, or you are talking about the thing in itself? There's a distinction between how we perceive things and how things are in themselves. If you lump them together, there's a whole big issue that will arise from that. But that's not my point. My point is that I want you to now do this. Anytime, go and look at all the proof text. Let's talk about the issue of the body, or Tejisim, or something like this. Let's talk about that. First, go and look at all those verses. وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا. Is that the real idea, or the surah? I think we should not just focus on that and think about how then the angels will be coming down. You should actually be thinking, what is that verse telling us? What is the verse telling us when he says وَجَاءَ رَبُّكَ وَالْمَلَكُ صَفًّا صَفًّا? It's describing the day of judgment. You should be thinking about yourself. How will my state be on that day? This is going to be a day when my judgment will finally be served. It's not going to be thinking, how are they descending? How are they flying? Are they going to be like this? Bro, why are you doing that? Why are you focusing on those kind of things instead of the real issue? You're not going to be standing there and saying, you see, we told you they're going to be flying like this. To me, if we go and look at all those verses that talks about physicality, they could be not interpreted away, not like I take the hand and then I say hand is like, even though you can do that, but to me, the main essence of that verse, if you read it in the whole context, Surah Naba, for instance, anything you read in that surah, read it about what is the main message of that surah. The other ones too, don't focus on yet when you are not supposed to do that. Yadullah fawqa aydihim. It's talking about the Jews. Look at the context of what's going on there. Don't just look at it says Yadullah fawqa aydihim, Yadullah, and then you stop and then you say, you see, this is the proof for hand. God was not telling you that. God is telling you about a particular issue that is going on, real life, context, right there. Do you see? So now I know it's too simplistic what I just said. You might not, but do it with all the verses, and you will see like there's a bigger picture going on behind the entire thing. And the safest position will be Tafwid. If you really want to go in there, you want to take a position, you want to take a stance, eventually, is to do Tafwid. Because you don't know these things anyway. Who are you? You probably don't know anything. So don't go and stand somewhere and stamp your ground like, we are these people. You don't know. Probably you don't know. You don't understand these things. So why don't you just do Tafwid? You leave the meaning to God on those kind of issues, and you take the bigger the message. I take the message that Shaitan, he did this. I'm not rejecting the Quran, because that's what the Quran is saying at that moment. We could derive any other thing like, look at how the Arabic is structured. You see this Arabic is structured in a particular way and it's perfect. I didn't see that. All I saw is I got the message. If you told me in another language, I got it already. That Shaitan disobeyed God, the thing that God created. I've gotten not the hand. Anyway, do you guys think this makes sense? And I started even writing. There was a time I was writing about this, like, you know, if you are just getting into it, you're fresh. Don't take a position yet. Try and understand what's going on first. From your own subjective perspective, try and see that before you plunge into one side, in particular, try and see, like, can I get something that is unique? And I feel like it might not be unique necessarily, but some of those things I'm telling you, all those verses, go and check them. They have a context that doesn't necessitate a description of how God is in particular. And funny enough, and this is why I said I'm much more inclined to the Ashari view, and in the respect of doing Tafwid and things like that, is that the verse that now talks about comparison is a negation. Whenever you say, okay, laysa kamithlihi shay, what was Semi all about here? God is, now there's comparison. God is telling you there's no comparison. There's no example of God. Nowadays, it's talking about God and His creation. Go to those other verses that talk about God and His creation. Is it a negation or an affirmation? That's where you will not see. But if you go to a random verse that is talking about something totally different, and then you go and derive attributes from that and say this is attribute, to me, that is, you might be interpreting too much into it. And wait, lastly, let me see if I can add one more thing on this issue. So, yeah, what was I saying about the Ash'ari view? Maybe not everything that you see in the Ash'ari Aqeedah you might agree with. Maybe not all of them, but on this issue in particular, they take the position of Tafwid. The position of Tafwid. To me, that's the safest position. I didn't know what it means. I was confused. See, these people, they are saying this thing and they mean this thing. And I took a position that, Allah Alam. Tell me what's safer than that. That you go and take a position on something you don't know. You see? And then their own charge will be like, you're saying God didn't tell you, Abi? Something like this. Like, are you saying God didn't tell us? So you're denying God told us something? No, I'm saying I already got the message of what God is telling me. You want to take it deeper and derive an attribute. I'm saying I leave that meaning to God. Because what I know about physical stuff, and I made another video about this, by the way, about teaching anthropomorphism. You can watch that. So anyway, do you guys think this makes sense? What do you think in the comment section? See you guys later. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.